Anthony, good morning to you. I guess you're just sitting back and watching this whole mess unfold.
Albo, we got you? All right, yeah, Albo's sitting there, and we'll just try and re-establish our contact with Albo there. I know Bill Shorten was on the show yesterday, saying and admitting to me that Labor has made mistakes in the past. When I said to him, "Well, you criticising the Liberal Party is a bit like the pot calling the kettle black, given what you did." But he also owned it yesterday, saying that we've made mistakes and we've corrected those. Albo, for you to be watching on here, a little bit of deja vu, and the similarities are obvious.
Well, unfortunately, what we're seeing is a government that's killing itself. I warned on the 23rd of June 2010 and indeed said on that night that we will kill 2 Labor Prime Ministers if we do this. And unfortunately, I think that was proven to be historically correct. What we're seeing here is a very small group of people essentially around Tony Abbott. I called Peter Dutton Tony Abbott's glove puppet on the Today Show last Friday, and I think that's right. There's a small disgruntled group of people who, when combined with social media and some of the shock jocks, are running this campaign for a bloke who, frankly, I've never seen hit 5% as preferred leader. He rates about 2 or 3. Christopher Pyne rates ahead of him as preferred leader, and there's a possibility that he may well be the unelected Prime Minister of Australia without a mandate. The Australian public should be very angry about the behaviour of Peter Dutton and the people around him today.
The Australian public is very angry. The Australian public is very disillusioned. You're a passionate politician. This is a sorry day for politics all round, isn't it, no matter what the outcome?
It is, absolutely. Look, we saw on Monday, Georgie, a poll that had 32% of Australians voting for neither the Coalition or the Labor Party. I think the next poll, that might be higher, that figure. And they're sick of politicians being concerned about ourselves and not the public interest. And Peter Dutton, for him to launch not just one campaign, but he had that on Tuesday, he had a ballot. Since then we've seen essentially the Peter Dutton forces say very clearly they don't care about the government. They just want to have Peter Dutton's name on the wall as a Prime Minister for however short a period of time. What should happen is an election. This is a government that's out of ideas, it's out of steam. You had Malcolm Turnbull put his hand up on Monday and say we can't have an energy policy because I can't get it through the House of Representatives. If Peter Dutton is successful in this extraordinary campaign that he's undertaking of just blowing the joint up completely. This is a campaign of destruction. If he is successful, he will inherit just rubble. I mean, the government's a rabble, and he will inherit rubble on the ground. That will be all that's left of the government, and whoever is in charge should go to Yarralumla and give the Australian people an opportunity to put this mob out of their misery.
Anthony Albanese, you talk about the Peter Dutton forces. Just elaborate on who precisely the Peter Dutton forces are.
Well, this is the hard right wing of the Liberal Party. These are the people who believe that climate change isn't happening in spite of all of the evidence that's out there. These are the people who believe in the public funding of coal-fired power stations. These are the people who believe in the past. They hanker for an Australia that, frankly, we've moved on from as a modern nation. And they are people who are very frustrated about any progress in society, and they want to turn the clock back. And they're angry at Malcolm Turnbull, they're angry at Labor, they're angry at anyone who disagrees with them. You've had circumstances now here in Parliament whereby you've had women MPs, they don't have that many on the Liberal side, complaining about being intimidated to sign petitions. You've had quite an extraordinary series of events that have just rolled on, and meantime they're not governing. We are supposed to have a ministerial statement today that I was supposed to be responding to at 9:30 about the MH370, and that's an issue which of course directly affected Australian families in that tragedy, and it's not going ahead at any particular time because the government has simply stopped functioning in this building.
Albo, you know what it's like, though, as an analysis as well, to be inside that party when it self-destructs. You know that there are big decisions that need to be made if you believe that the leader you have cannot lead your party to the next election to victory. And something needs to be done. The wound needs to be cauterised, and you were involved in that. The problem for you is the people who you're attacking this morning in terms of the right of the coalition may be the very people that make it harder for you to win at the next election.
Well, the truth is that in Australian politics, it's won from more of the centre than either the extreme right or the extreme left. That's the history of politics in Australia, that people have to be prepared to reach out and appeal beyond just the core base. What the Liberal Party are forgetting here is that it's not just Liberal Party members who go to branch meetings who get to vote at federal elections. There are other people, and what they expect is a bit of common sense in their politics, is less ideology, is a government that's prepared to stand up for them. We had a chat, Carl, just a couple of months ago, seems like a long time ago. The speech I gave in the Whitlam oration was pretty prescient given the events this week. What I was saying there is that people want more solutions, less argument. They want people to be prepared to reach out to both unions and employers. They want a more consensus approach in their politics. They are sick of people just yelling at each other. And what we've seen, I mean, Peter Dutton, I get on with him okay, but the bloke can't crack a smile. You know, he's so angry at the world. What we actually need is to lift people up. That's what political leaders need to do. And I don't think Peter Dutton, if he's successful, will be capable of that. And Malcolm Turnbull, unfortunately, is in a circumstance whereby all of the things that he believed in, he's given up in order to, one, gain power from Tony Abbott, but two, keep power at the moment. And we saw that with a complete capitulation, even though last week on energy it was overwhelmingly carried by his party room. That wasn't enough because, again, you saw that small group of angry people effectively have veto over policy.
Let's get back to this proposed second spill, and knowing spills as you do intimately from within Labor ranks, give us a bit of insight as far as you know as to what will be going on as we speak. We understand Matthias Cormann, who of course carries a lot of influence in this situation, is meeting now with the Prime Minister. Give us a bit of an understanding as to what would be the next step, if you could.
Well, what will be going on is a strategic assessment of whether, on the one hand, a leader, when someone asks for a ballot, people give them one. That's the history. When on the night of 23rd of June 2010, Kevin Rudd and senior people in the government debated whether we should bring on the ballot for leadership the next morning, or whether the rules would apply of signatures on a petition. Kevin Rudd announced, I think quite rightly at that time, to bring on the ballot the next morning, knowing, I think at that time, that it was likely he would not be successful, but that it was in the interests of the government continuing, the Labor government continuing, that he do that. So he put the collective interest before his own, if you like, and Julia Gillard, of course, emerged as Prime Minister the next day. The circumstances here are very different, because what they'll be weighing up is they've had a ballot just 2 days ago. I mean, if they give them another ballot today, if Peter Dutton can't get the 43 signatures, and at this stage it would appear, I reckon if he had them, then he'd be waving them in front of a camera now. You know, if they give him another ballot today, does he have another one in 2 days' time? I mean, you know, there is a limit. So I think Malcolm Turnbull is within his rights to say, no, you had your ballot. There'll be another party room in a couple of weeks. There's no doubt this instability is permanent now. And what we might be seeing, essentially, is a split emerging, which can't be repaired, and effectively a split in the Liberal Party between the Conservative forces and the moderate forces, because this sort of behaviour is very difficult to put back together, and that's the problem that they have. And there's the added issue, of course, is Peter Dutton eligible to be in the Parliament? Now, Peter Dutton's so-called legal advice isn't explicit about that at all. We have released advice from Brett Walker, SC. He is one of Australia's leading legal minds, saying that there is a very real issue here. Professor Anne Toomey has said the same thing. So the circumstances whereby I don't believe it's possible that Peter Dutton could be sworn in with that cloud over his head, and the circumstances whereby the government has sought advice from the Solicitor General, certainly when that's received, that should be released. And there is, at the very least, a cloud over Peter Dutton, and it's a cloud that probably can only be settled by the High Court of Australia making a determination.
Well, Albo, you've also got a great ability to cut through and also talk in a fairly neutral way in terms of some issues. If you were to be the Prime Minister right now, given what you know about him, also given what's happening around him right now, what's his move? How does he survive even today?
Well, he just has to hold his nerve today. There's no doubt that Christopher Pyne will be giving him that advice this morning. I think the issue of the cloud over Peter Dutton's eligibility to be a Member of Parliament, and what we know is that the High Court have been really strict on these issues. People who thought, and they had legal advice saying they were okay, went to by-elections, or in senators' cases were simply replaced by the next person on the ticket. And the High Court has ruled that don't worry about if it was an accident, or because you thought it was okay, or you didn't have time to fix up your eligibility. It's a black and white interpretation is what this High Court has had. And there's real circumstances here. We had, of course, the South Australian senator from Family First, Bob Day, rubbed out on the issue of Section 44 of the Constitution, and that led to his resignation from the Parliament. So we'll wait and see where that ends up, but I think that means almost that Malcolm Turnbull has an obligation to not just walk away. There's the other thing that may well happen here as well, which is that there's a possibility of the emergence of a Scott Morrison or a Julie Bishop. Certainly both of them, Julie Bishop in particular, is obviously much more popular in all of the polls than Peter Dutton. And there will be people who are either in the Turnbull camp, or maybe they voted for Dutton because they think it's time for a change of some sort, or there's people who just want an end to all of this, who'll be considering whether there's the possibility of the emergence of another candidate, which is of course more likely if the Prime Minister of this morning is still the Prime Minister of this evening.
Well, tomorrow morning on the Today Show, you might be joined by Prime Minister Christopher Pyne for your weekly segment, and we look forward. We look forward to
there's
that
a
very
thought.
much.
Well, I think that at least would be a more interesting ride for the nation.
Thanks, Albo.